Hello Stampers! We're going to go on a little kayaking adventure today with the new Adventurous Journey stamp set. I just love this little kayaker. If you have an adventurous person on your card list, you'll want to pick this stamp set up. This boat is just awesome, and I can also see this boat used a lot like on a beach or something like that, and it's a good stamp set to pick up. And I'm also pulling in the Bamboo Beauty stamp set because I wanted to use these leaves and the bamboo in this card just to make it kind of look a bit jungly. So that's what I did here, and we're going to get started with our main panel. We're going to use Emboss Resist on this card, and I'm starting out with a basic white panel, and all the dimensions for these panels are down below this video. Just click show more and you'll see them down there, along with all the links to the products used that you can click, and it'll take you directly to my online store where you can shop with me 24/7. I've cut two panels of basic white. They're 3 inches by 4.5 inches, and I'm going to use one for my main panel here, and we're going to get going with Granny Apple Green. This is a nice bright green. And I'm going to use Versamark for this project. So we're going to use the small leafy stamp and a Bamboo Beauty. There's two leaf stamps. There's a large one and a small one. We're using the small one right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to load my stamp up with Versamark. Then I'm going to load it up with the Granny Apple Green ink, and then I'll stamp my image. And then I'm going to clean my stamp in between just by rubbing it on a Stampin' scrub, and just to take some of the ink off, and then repeat the process. I'm asked a lot if this affects your ink pads in any way. I've did this for about 20 years now, and I've not had any problem with the Versamark being on the stamp and then going into the ink pad at all. It doesn't hurt your ink pads. So there's that. So let's get going on this fun technique. So I'm going to load my stamp with Versamark, load it with my Granny Apple Green, and then I'm going to stamp my image. And I'm loading it first with Versamark just so that that gives the ink a tacky feel, and that will hold the embossing powder we're going to be putting on it. So I'm just giving my stamp a couple swipes on a stamp cleaning pad before I reload it. And I'm stamping these leaves every which way along the edges of this paper here. Okay, let's go this way. I just want some on the fringes. You don't want to go all the way to the center. You want these on the edge. And the reason I'm going to emboss these, to do the Emboss Resist technique, is they stay bright green. If I was to just stamp these over our blue water later on, they wouldn't show up that bright. They would be really dulled down, and you wouldn't get that same effect that that bright green gives us. Okay, put one there, and maybe one more. Doesn't take long to do this, and it sure pays off in the end. Okay, so there's a few that we got going there. And now I'm going to do one more thing. I'm just going to use the Versamark by itself. I have this little circly stamp here, and it looks like a water ripple. So I'm just loading it with Versamark only, and I'm going to stamp it here on the panel about where the paddle of the boat will be. Okay, and then I'm going to bring in some clear embossing powder. And I'm going to put it all over my panel. I keep my embossing powder in a tub for easy use here. You don't have to worry about trying to get it back in some small jar. Give it a flick on the back here. Just look around for big patches of stray powder. If you have an embossing buddy, you could be using that before you do your stamping. That helps keep things clean too. All right, so I have that all in with embossing powder on it. Let's clean up here a little bit. Put my ink pads up. And I'm going to bring out my heat tool and I'm going to heat these up just until they turn shiny, and I will be right back. Okay, my leaves and my little water ripple here are all nice and shiny. All the powder's melted. Now be careful that you don't overheat these embossed images, because what will happen is that embossing will sink down into the paper, and then you won't get the same effect when you go to put your ink on top of it. So make sure you don't overheat them. You only want to take them to where they go to a shiny color and then stop heating. So that's the embossing that we're going to do, and we're going to go ahead and put our water in. I'm going to start with Balmy Blue and a brush here. I'm going to put Balmy Blue all over this panel. See how those embossed images just stay nice and bright green. Just what we want. There we go. Next I'm going to bring in some Pacific Point. And a blending brush. You can tell I use blending brushes a lot because you can end up with ink all over your ink pad edges, which is fine with me. These are tools. I don't worry about keeping my tools all pristine, especially my ink pads. I got stamping to do. So I'm not worried about all that cleaning stuff. That probably drives a few of you crazy that I'm like that. I know some of you like to keep everything nice and pretty. Here we go. So there's our water. I wanted it nice and light in the middle with the Balmy Blue, and then I put the Pacific Point on the sides. So that is our main background here. So we're going to set that aside, and I have the other piece of cardstock that we cut 3 by 4.5. And I'm going to bring out some Memento Tuxedo Black. And I'm going to go ahead and stamp my kayak guy here. I'm going to load this up really well with black ink. And give him a stamp on the paper. I love Memento Tuxedo Black to stamp my images in that I plan on using Stampin' Blends with, because the Stampin' Blends won't bleed into it or make it smear or any of that. And I'm going to start with an ivory Stampin' Blend for his skin tone, or her skin tone, it could be a girl. And just color the hands and arms in. It's about all the skin you can see on the person here. I'm going to use a light soft suede marker and color the hat in. And the little pole for this paddle. I'm going to bring some pumpkin pie in. I wanted him to have a nice bright orange jacket on for his life vest, and then the paddles. Leaving the shirt white. And this is a dark granny apple green Stampin' Blend, and we're going to color the boat in with this. This little rim around where he's sitting in, I'm leaving that with no color, so it stays white. And then I'm not coloring over these X's here, because that would be elastic bands where kayakers put their stuff. And that keeps things organized for them on their little kayak. I just wanted to leave those white. And all the little green places here. And that is all the coloring that we're going to need to do. So next we just need to cut our little kayaker out. I'm using a pair of paper snips from Stampin' Up. I love these little sharp scissors. When I'm cutting out things, I let the scissors do the work mostly. I try to move the paper as I'm closing the scissors down, and that lets you get rounded corners and that type of thing. Here we go. Just like that, we got them all cut out. And now we're ready to put it on our project. So I'm going to put it on so that the paddle is on the little ripple there. I see I left a little piece of white on that one little oar here. Take that off. I'm going to use multi-purpose glue to glue it on. You use whatever adhesive you like. There we go. And I'm not worried that whether he's in the middle of the scene or not. It's actually better to have him be a little back in the scene. That way it gives him somewhere to go. So he doesn't look like he's just instantly running off the paper. So there's our little guy on his adventure. And now we're going to go ahead and back this main panel with a pumpkin pie panel. This pumpkin pie panel is 1/8 of an inch larger than this main panel. So it's 3 1/8 by 4 5/8. Let's add some love in here. There we go, and that just gives it a little trim, really brightens things up. So we're going to set that aside. And then I have a basic white panel that's 4 inches square. And I'm going to get some Balmy Blue ink. And I just want to go over this panel with Balmy Blue. This panel is going to be lighter than our main panel because we're not going to add that Pacific point on it. But I wanted to give it just a hint of color and keep it nice and bright. There we go. It's nice and splotchy like I like. I always like a splotchy background like that when you're putting in trees or anything like that, because that looks like sky. We're going to bring our Granny Apple Green back out. And I have the large trunks for the bamboo, but we're going to use Granny Apple Green for this. And we're going to just stamp a few on this paper. I like my bamboo to go every which way instead of just straight up and down. You can cross them over. You're not going to see a lot of this, mainly around the edges. That's kind of fun stamping there. So that was the large trunk. See, there's a skinny one and then a larger one. I used the large one, and I'm going to use these large leaves with it. This Bamboo Beauty set is so fun to use. I've used it quite a bit, actually. If you follow my channel, you probably have seen it quite a bit. So now I'm just going to stamp some of these leaves around. You can have them coming in from the paper. Around the edges, you don't have to worry so much about having them bright coming off of the bamboo, because a lot of, like I said, this is going to be covered up by our main panel here. Just want to make sure I have some that you can see. There we go. Easy peasy. Now we're ready to put our card together. So I have a Granny Apple Green card base, and it's 5.5 by 8.5, and then I folded it in half for a quarter card. So I folded it in half for a quarter card, and then inside I put a pumpkin pie panel that's 4 by 5.25, and then a Balmy Blue panel that's 3 3/4 by 5. Now we're going to add this panel on our front of our card, and it's going to be over to the left side. And I'm going to leave about 1/4 of an inch around it. Oh, it's more like 1/8 of an inch. I'll leave about 1/8 of an inch around this. On here, add our main panel. I'm going to come out to this edge quite a bit over here on the right. Check to make sure it's kind of straight. There we go. And there's our card for today. Thanks for joining me today. I hope this took you on a stamping adventure and that you go out and get inky. Bye.